Shocking revelation, the true order of the 10 Commandments they've kept hidden from you. Few knew what truly happened that night in the shadow of Mount Sinai. The air crackled with tension, thick as the ominous clouds swirling above. Moses stood on the jagged rock face, receiving words from the divine. But did he grasp the true weight of those commandments? Could anyone? The mountain loomed like a silent guardian, watching over the Israelites gathered below. They quaked with apprehension, eyes wide, hearts racing. Whispers swirled among them like a dark wind. What if the words Moses was to bring down held other secrets? Secrets their leaders wanted to bury. Some claimed the stones glowed with an unearthly light, illuminating the faces of the faithful. Others recalled flickering shadows, a twisting possibility that the commandments could change everything. Each word carried a weight heavier than the stones themselves. History had been waiting for this moment, trembling just beneath the surface, but the journey to deliver these commandments wasn't without conflict. The faithful huddled together in fear, debating the morality of the very rules designed to guide them. There were murmurs about which commandment should claim a place at the summit. Was it right to place the sanctity of the Sabbath next to the ban against killing? How could a society live when their very laws contradicted the heart of their existence? As the tension climbed, confusion reigned. Every commandment was a paradox. What did it mean to honor one's parents, yet follow the divine above all? People feared confronting the very fabric of their existence. They watched Moses with bated breath, waiting for clarity. Instead, they found only deeper mysteries. The commandments, they realized, would reveal more than just rules. They would expose the very nature of humanity, the fragility, the darkness, the hope, and then, in a moment that felt frozen in time, Moses descended, stone tablets in hand. A radiant light enveloped him. Eyes widened. Did he bring the truth, or would it shatter their already fragile world? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Moses stood at the foot of the mountain, the air thick with both reverence and doubt. As he approached the awaiting crowd, the brilliance that enveloped him began to fade, revealing not just the sacred tablets but his own troubled visage. The Israelites, hearts racing, felt a mix of anticipation and dread. They were ready for rules, yet unprepared for the possible revelations buried within those very stones. The murmurs grew louder, a swirling storm of questions bouncing from face to face. What truths lie within? Will these stones grant us peace, or incite division? Moses paused, his hands trembling as he held the tablets tightly, feeling the engraved words etched deeper than stone, imprinted in their very souls. He understood, then, that the commandments were not just laws, but mirrors reflecting their deepest fears and hardest truths. People of Israel. Moses called, his voice echoing against the mountain's rugged face. These words are not merely instructions, they are a covenant, a profound bridge between the divine and humanity. They speak to our existence. His heart raced with the weight of that responsibility. He felt the pull of the heavens whispering through him, but understood that the gift of divine clarity was never simple. As he began to read them aloud, the crowd leaned in, the weight of the moment settling upon them. With each commandment spoken, their reactions morphed from cautious curiosity to palpable anxiety. Thou shalt not kill. The words hung in the air, demanding a reckoning. How could they honor life when anger simmered within their hearts? Thou shalt not steal. A ripple of guilt washed over many. What had they taken? Trust? Safety? The very essence of community? Each commandment laid bare not only their rules but their relationship with one another and with God, magnifying their internal struggles. The laws that brought order also highlighted desires of the heart. Even as Moses spoke, he sensed the hesitations. Honoring thy parents echoed painfully through families where love was overshadowed by conflict. Remember the Sabbath ignited reflections on the toll of their endless toil in the desert. Each commandment revealed a complexity woven into their existence, as though the very fabric of their being was being unraveled. After the last commandment, a heavy silence fell. The people stood, grappling with the weight of the words, feeling both the call to righteousness and the fear of their unworthiness. What Moses had placed before them was more than mere rules, it was a challenge to face their flaws, an invocation to invoke grace. In that silence, a lone voice rose from the crowd, a woman, trembling, but resolved. Moses, what do we do if we fail? Her question cut through the air like a knife, a reminder that the path towards holiness was fraught with struggle. The gaze of the community converged on him, their eyes brimming with anxiety and hope. Moses shivered, understanding that the path ahead might not offer clear answers. The commandments, while sacred, would also serve as a continual reminder of their human inadequacies. It is in our striving that we find our responsibility to one another, he replied, though the edge of doubt lingered in his mind. Would the people unite in this shared struggle, or would they fracture under the weight of truth? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, he wondered about the secrets yet to unfold. What lay ahead for a people torn between divine aspiration and human frailty? Would they connect these commandments to a spirit of compassion or wield them as tools of division? As they turned their faces toward the fading light, a single, unresolved question lingered in the air, echoing in their hearts. Could this be the beginning of a new understanding, or would it mark the dawn of deeper despair? As dusk fell over the encampment, a heavy stillness enveloped the Israelites. The resonating echoes of the commandments lingered like a haunting refrain in their hearts. Men and women clustered in small groups, whispering in hushed tones, their faces a mixture of contemplation and concern. Shadows danced in the flickering light of campfires, casting silhouettes of uncertainty alongside flickers of hope. Moses, though revered, felt the nation's collective weight upon his shoulders. He had delivered the message, yet the questions, those fiery torments of doubt, had yet to find resolution. Each face in the crowd seemed to grapple with a unique conflict. As he observed, he was reminded that while these commandments were divine, their interpretations were woven into the very fabric of human relationships. A sudden commotion stirred the crowd. A group of young men, emboldened by the earlier fervor, stepped forward. Moses! One called out, the arrogance of youth mingling with genuine quest. You tell us of these commandments, but where is the proof of their power? How can one stone change a heart? Moses found himself arrested by the question. Had he ever truly seen the heart transformed by mere words etched in stone? The answer loomed as a profound silence around him. What example do we have? Another voice chimed, urgency cracking through the air. We have seen the wonders of the Lord, mighty plagues, miraculous parting sight. How do we know these commandments will lead us to freedom? The challenge was unprecedented, a summons to move beyond blind faith into the territory of personal experience. As Moses pondered their inquiries, an unexpected clarity sparked within him. The commandments, he began slowly, are not just the foundations of law but the seeds of relationship. He imagined the stories of their ancestors Abraham, Isaac, Sarah, whose lives were emblematic of faith's struggles and triumphs. It is through obedience that we cultivate a spirit of closeness with the Almighty. These stones will be our guide, and through them, we shall encounter the eternal. Yet, as he spoke, doubt unearthed within him. Could mere adherence to laws shield them from the very wrongs they desired to eschew? An unyielding resolve began to wrestle within him. If we falter, if we stumble, will we lean into God's grace or recoil in guilt? It is not enough to know the commandments, we must live them. As the tension in the air grew thick, a child's voice, innocent and pure, cut through the struggles of adults. But what if we forget? Her eyes, wide with sincerity, pierced through the haze of uncertainty. What happens when we forget? Will we be cast away? The question sent a ripple of introspection through the crowd. In moments of weakness or disobedience, could they still hold on to their relationship with the divine? Would their failures become irrevocable walls, or could they foster new pathways of understanding and forgiveness? Moses sensed the raw vulnerability behind her words, the fragility inherent in being human. his heart stirred with earnestness as he reflected on his own journey. Forgetting, dear child, is a human ailment. Yet, it is within our seeking, within our returning, that we find our worth. The commandments are our reminders, yes, but God's mercy understanding circles us continuously. The murmurs around him shifted, hope began to emerge amidst uncertainty. Yet still, a shadow hovered, a deeper truth left unacknowledged. How could they reconcile the tension between upholding divine laws and embracing the frail essence of humanity? As night settled, the flickering fires reflected the complex world ahead, illuminating the pathway they were to tread together. What would their future hold? Perhaps, even more pressing than their adherence to the commandments, was the question, how would they engage with one another in their shared imperfections? How could communal love bridge the gaps left by individual frailty as they embraced the divine call together? The night deepened, wrapping the encampment in a cloak of solemnity. Shadows crept along the ground, merging with the uncertain hearts of the Israelites. Each flicker of the campfire sparked contemplation, setting the scene for a gathering born out of necessity. Tension lingered in the air, yet so too did the thread of curiosity that drove them to seek deeper understanding not only of the commandments but of themselves. Moses stood before the assembly, a figure tinged with both authority and vulnerability. The child's question reverberated in his mind as though a whisper from God himself. "What if we forget?" she had asked. The graven mandates were meant to guide them, yet how could they touch their very souls without compassion entwined within them? As a breeze swept through the camp, Moses felt the weight of the moment. The dusk was but a precursor to the mystery unfolding. "Gather close," he said, his voice carrying the gravity of what was about to be revealed. "There is more hidden within these commandments than we perceive. They are a mirror reflecting our hearts, a divine conversation for those who dare to listen." The crowd surged forward, their curiosity ignited. Moses took a breath and unveiled not merely the commandments but the context in which they were given. These words were not merely shaped for our guidance, they emerged from the depths of love and relationship. When the Almighty spoke them, He invited us into His character, revealing the very essence of who He is as well as who we are meant to be. Each commandment is laced with an incredible depth that transcends mere legalities. A murmur spread through the audience, skepticism mingling with intrigue. But how then do we live them fully? When we struggle, when we inevitably stray away from the path? Questioned an elder, his voice heavy with the burden of his years. Moses nodded, acknowledging the depth of this inquiry. We must first and foremost remember the depth of the covenant we share with God. In our confessions, in our asking for forgiveness, we engage in a sacred dance of returning, always returning. He paused, considering the undeniable truth of their existence. In each falling, we are met in grace, a grace that doesn't condone disobedience but beckons us to a richer fulfillment of these commandments, one infused with mercy and love. The assembly fell silent, the flickering flames underscoring the reality of his words. Each individual began to wrestle with their understanding of the commandments, not as cold edicts but as touchstones of their relationship with the Creator. For the first time, the adults turned toward one another, whispering their thoughts and reflections, seeking not only their own understanding but the collective wisdom that could arise among them. Yet a question continued to pulse beneath the surface, haunting in its simplicity. If we are to see these laws as living invitations, then how do we ensure that our strictures do not evolve into shackles? A young voice, not unlike the child's earlier inquiry, sought clarity, and its courage brought a renewed energy to the gathering. Moses contemplated this profound question. Through love, dear one. Love is the key that unlocks every intention behind the commandments. When we engage with each other in love, we fulfill their purpose and breathe life into them, as they breathe life into us. His gaze shifted across the multitude, taking in their faces illuminated by firelight, each one a unique reflection of a shared journey. As the discussion flourished around him, a call to unity resonated amongst the people. They spoke of their need for patience with one another, the understanding that obedience would resemble a tapestry woven with both triumphs and failures. They began to ponder what it meant to create community within the framework of divine guidance, how every misstep could invite forgiveness and lead to greater closeness with one another and God. Yet still, an underlying tension lingered. Would they embrace the discomfort that inevitably came with vulnerability? Would they truly endeavor to carry each other's burdens, creating a culture of support amid imperfection? A flicker of uncertainty remained, even with their newfound insights. Moses inhaled deeply, aware that the answers they sought were not merely in the words carved into stone but in the journey they would forge together, navigating the intersection of divine law and human frailty. As the fires cracked and popped, he posed a question meant to echo long into the night: how will our hearts respond when faced with the challenge of loving fiercely amid the inconsistencies of our lives? As the embers glowed softly in the night, the murmurs of the assembly began to wane, a silence settling in that felt both heavy and expectant. Prayers hummed beneath the surface like the gentle rustle of leaves. Moses knew the moment to delve deeper into the essence of their faith had arrived, a moment that might unveil not merely the directives etched in stone but a narrative that revealed the heart of God and the journey they were meant to undertake. People of Israel, he lifted his hands, his voice strong yet tender. Tonight, we are called to explore not just the commandments but the heart of the covenant they embody. The Almighty, in His infinite wisdom, granted us these words not solely to guide our actions but to transform our hearts. That He motioned for their attention as if drawing them into a sacred space, where the soft light of the campfires blurred the shadows into something more profound, a canvas for the divine. Consider this: when the commandments were given upon the mountain, surrounded by thunder and fire, they were an invitation, a holy calling to communion with God. A few whispered to one another, processing the weight of His proclamation. Moses continued, in that encounter with the divine, each commandment serves as both a reminder and a revelation of our relationship with the Creator and each other. We must look beyond the surface. The first commandment reminds us to place God above all, not as a tyrant demanding servitude but as a father extending his hand, inviting us to a life filled with purpose. Curiosity sparked among the people, a collective yearning to grasp the nuances of this divine narrative. He paused, looking at them as one would a beloved family gathering, seeking to impart wisdom in a way that felt both intimate and necessary. The second commandment, speaking against idols, beckons us to examine what we prioritize. Are we, perhaps, crafting our own gods of fear, greed, or despair in their stead? Or will we dismantle those illusions to embrace the true nature of God, who desires our hearts unblemished by distraction? A rustle moved through the crowd. They had come seeking direction but found themselves facing their own truths reflected back at them. Moses inhaled deeply, aware that vulnerability was essential for genuine transformation. Each commandment is a dialogue, he said, and in our willingness to enter into that dialogue, we might be surprised by the grace that awaits us on the other side. The night air grew cooler as thoughts turned inward, reflecting on their lives and choices. The questions they had once evaded came rushing forth. What idols did they cling to? What fears guarded their hearts and minds, keeping them from full communion with the divine? These reflections were not just personal but echoed collectively within the camp. A voice broke the contemplative hush, a woman whose face glowed with the light of realization. If these commandments serve as reflections of our need for deeper connection, how might we evolve as a community? How do we awaken each other to this truth? Moses felt the weight of the query as he recognized the depth of their search for community amidst their struggles. Her question carved open an avenue for further exploration, one that would require immense courage and commitment. Ah, he mused, in the heart of love lies the answer. Only within love can we build bridges across our differences, cultivating empathy and understanding. When we recognize our collective frailty, we can support one another instead of creating barriers. As they mulled over these insights, a gentle breeze echoed their unspoken longing to intertwine their lives with those of their neighbors, to soften the rigid edges that lay between them. Yet Moses felt a tension in the air, an uncertainty as palpable as the stars above. But brothers and sisters, he continued, what happens when our love falters? What do we do in the moments when our hearts grow weary or our judgments cloud our views? The flickering flames dance between truth and fear, uncertainty clinging to their souls. Without resolution, the assembly pondered their role within the evolving tapestry of community, a structure that required trust built over to me, a promise that love could endure through the trials of life. As night pressed forward, the question lingered: could they truly embrace a practice of grace and forgiveness that would let them experience the depths of these commandments? Would they muster the strength to step into relationship with one another, risking the vulnerability that might come only through love. The fire crackled as the shadows of doubt danced in the edges of their souls, and they were left in reflection as to whether they would rise together in faith or remain shackled by their fears. The silence that followed Moses' last words wrapped around the assembly like a heavy cloak, weighty with anticipation yet crowded with uncertainty. As the night deepened, a sliver of moonlight broke through the canopy of stars, illuminating faces caught between doubt and hope. They looked upon one another as if seeking refuge from their own trepidation, drawing closer in the promise of community while wrestling with their fears and revelations. "Let us not shy away from the questions that stir within us," Moses urged gently. "Amidst our flaws and frailty, truth must emerge to light. There exists a hidden truth within the very fabric of the commandments, a revelation that perhaps we have overlooked in our eagerness to comply." A whisper of intrigue rippled through the crowd. They were hungry for deeper insights, aware that Moses had more to unveil. "Think on the order of these commandments," he continued. "The first four guide our relationship with the Almighty, inviting us to acknowledge Him as the center of our existence. They implore us to love Him without reservation, yet they precede the others, the last six that shape our dealings with each other. What, then, must we learn from this sequence?" A man among the assembly rose to his feet, his brow knitted in contemplation. "Could it be, Moses, that our relationship with God lays the foundation for how we interact with one another? If we falter in our love for Him, how then can we hope to extend that love outward?" "Precisely," Moses affirmed, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "When we grasp the depth of our commitment to Him, the intertwining of our hearts and actions with His infinite grace, we become proximate to understanding empathy in our relations. Our failures become mirrors reflecting the need for fortitude within ourselves and the courage to engage with each other in authenticity. As the people erupted with murmurs, the tension shifted palpably in the air. They nodded in resonance, yet questions burgeoned like wildflowers. What does it mean to love God wholeheartedly? How can one move from mere duty to deep devotion in the midst of their earthly trials? "Fear not these questions, for they, too, are sacred," Moses encouraged, sensing an awakening. "In our struggles to love one another, we uncover the divine mysteries of forgiveness and compassion. Just as the first commandment encourages us to honor God as paramount, we too are given permission to rise and forgive our neighbors, to seek restoration and mend broken relationships." A young woman, her voice trembling with vulnerability, spoke up. "Moses, can we truly forgive those who have wronged us? Is it not easier to hold on to pain, to let it shape our identity rather than seeking the freedom that comes from release?" "Ah, therein lies the heart of our struggle," he replied. "Forgiveness is not simply an act, it is the very essence of love at work. When we allow the love of God to transform our hearts, we find the strength to forgive, struggling against remnants of fear and resentment. The commandments serve as our compass, guiding us not only to act rightly but to cultivate an inner disposition that mirrors divine grace." The embers cracked softly, and the crowd fell into a meditative hush, contemplating the challenge of such a path. An elderly man, wise and seasoned, raised his hands to silence the whispers. "Moses, while our hearts desire to embrace these truths, we are but human. We have seen our own frailties, the struggles within our families, and the distance between communities. How can we achieve this love and forgiveness that you speak of? Can we truly hope to live in harmony when our hearts are often in conflict?" The night held its breath as they pondered his query. Moses felt the weight of those words sink deep within him. He sensed that the challenge lay not only in words but in actions, a collective journey of faith woven through trials, doubt, and ultimately, grace. "Indeed, brother, we tread a difficult path, fraught with genuine challenge. Yet, it is in vulnerability and honesty that we discover the power to bridge the divides among us. But can love thrive amidst our differing perspectives? Can this assembly, flawed though we may be, become a tapestry of grace?" The young woman murmured softly, her eyes glistening with the unspoken fears that echoed around the gathering. A silent pact seemed to form in the dim flicker of the firelight, a commitment to explore deeper and face the truths hidden in their hearts. As the people looked to Moses, they recognized that the journey had only just begun. Could a community as diverse and imperfect as theirs truly navigate the heart of the commandments, embracing love's complexity in the midst of their struggles? Would they dare to walk the path of vulnerability and forgiveness, seeking to live out the divine call woven within each commandment? As they reflected, the night whispered possibilities layered with uncertainty, leaving them with an abiding question that hung in the air like the stars above: where would their journey lead if they allowed love to be their guide? As the night deepened, the assembly remained encircled around the fire, captivated by the gravity of their reflections. Shadows danced across their faces, bringing the weight of their thoughts into sharper relief. The murmur of uncertainty loomed like a low-hanging cloud, unwilling to dissipate. Each heart seemed to pulse in unison, whispering a deep-seated yearning for understanding. Moses looked beyond the flickering flames, summoning strength from the unseen mysteries that hovered just beyond human grasp. In our quest for spiritual insight, he began, his voice resonating with a newfound urgency, we must not only ponder the truths of our commandments, but examine the very essence of our existence, the ineffable bond between humanity and the divinity that crafted it. At this, an elder woman, her hair silver as moonlight, leaned forward, her eyes hopeful yet probing. Moses, if we are to understand this essence, we must confront the very nature of our existence, don't we? What if the struggles we face amidst our earthly trials are woven into a larger tapestry, one that transcends the immediate perceptions of our hearts? How can the command to love illuminate these dimensions? Moses nodded, sensing the thread of wisdom in her query. You are correct, our struggles reflect a divine narrative. We are often blinded by the present turmoil, but within these trials lie deeper mechanisms at work. God's intentions manifest in our experiences, and thus, when we engage with one another, we are invited to partake in a greater journey, the journey of shared humanity. The assembly stirred as a young man spoke, his voice trembling with the import of his thoughts. So, you suggest that our pains and conflicts are not just obstacles but opportunities to glimpse the divine, to unlock deeper truths within our relationships? But how can we approach one another vulnerably without the fear of being trampled by another's wounds? Moses paused, feeling the weight of past generations weigh upon his shoulders. It is precisely in vulnerability that strength is born, he counseled quietly. Remember, the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself implies an invitation to see their wounds as reflections of our own. And in doing so, we chip away at the walls of isolation that fear erects in our hearts. Love, even in vulnerability, can cultivate acceptance. The people leaned in closer, curiosity sparking in their eyes as they contemplated this radical assertion. But what if we stumble? What happens if our efforts to love expose us to harm or betrayals? A voice quivered from the crowd. Moses raised his hands gently, as if to gather their concerns like kindling. In the act of loving, fear disarms. It may leave us vulnerable, yes, but it also opens a conduit for grace to flow. Are we not taught that grace offerings are often born in the ashes of failures? It is a risk we must be willing to undertake if we desire true community, a sacred trust that might just break the cycle of hurt. A young man, emboldened, stood firm and addressed the assembly. But Moses, if we are to trust one another amidst our vulnerabilities, how do we discern who to embrace? What prevents the cycle of pain from repeating? A heavy silence engulfed the crowd, and Moses felt the gravity of the question settle into the space between them. The challenge of vulnerability was indeed compounded by a history of wounds. Discernment is a gift we must learn to cultivate, he replied, his tone softening. In the dance of relationships, we remain acutely aware of our presence, intentions, and rights to protect our hearts. Yet, it is in our willingness to tread the delicate line between caution and trust that the truest expressions of love arise. The fire crackled, casting a mosaic of light upon their thoughtful faces. There was an understanding that this path was laden with risks, unforeseen detours, forking paths born of choice. They sought clarity in the swirling fog of uncertainty, each question leading them deeper into unknown territories of self-discovery and collective anticipation. As the first light of dawn began to unfurl at the edges of the horizon, bathed in shades of hope and uncertainty, the congregation felt their hearts pulse with the rhythm of budding possibility. They began to grasp that their journey was not simply about embracing love but also about unearthing the shadows dwelling therein, a transformative act of seeking God within the relationships they were called to cherish. The night whispered of truths yet to be revealed, leaving an ache of anticipation. Would they possess the courage to venture into this profound love that would awaken not only the hearts of the assembly but sow seeds of change throughout their land? Would the desires of their hearts lead them toward healing rather than division? With an assembly so fractured and diverse, could they embark on this journey of discovering not just their divine calling, but the essence of their very selves? The dawn lingered on the threshold of a new beginning, burdened with an unresolved question: where would their willingness to love lead them next, into the light or further into shadow? As the sun broke over the horizon, casting a warm glow across the faces of the assembly, murmurs of hope mingled with the remnants of the night's gravity. The air pulsed with curiosity as the group wrestled with the fiery ember of questions ignited by Moses' teachings. A stillness hung in the air, poised to cradle the dawning realizations that shimmered just beneath the surface. Moses, sensing the stirring anticipation, rose once more to the occasion. Beloved friends, as we breathe in this fresh day, let us consider a crucial aspect of our shared journey: the commandments. They are not merely rules etched in stone but divine whispers meant to guide our hearts toward understanding, toward a profound relationship with God and one another. The elder woman from the previous night, now infused with renewed determination, stood and voiced her thoughts. Moses, you speak of the commandments as whispers rather than decrees. Could it be that they contain layers of wisdom we have painfully overlooked? Perhaps there are deeper meanings concealed within the words that could illuminate our struggles. Moses nodded, his eyes shining with the light of shared discovery. Indeed, each command is a door through which we may enter and explore the intricacies of love. We have spoken of vulnerability and discernment. What if I told you the first commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me," is at the heart of all connection? A ripple of intrigue washed over the assembly. Your devotion to the One, your willingness to set aside worldly distractions, does not minimize your relationship with others. In fact, it enhances it, for when the Creator is placed first, love flows freely, bridging the divides between our souls. He continued, as the fire's warmth wrapped around them like an embrace. As Moses unveiled this new perspective, a young woman, filled with a hunger for insight, interjected. If the first commandment is a reflection of our commitment to the divine, how does it help us navigate the tangled web of relationships? When the weight of human error seems insurmountable, can love truly prevail? Moses, the echoes of the past whispering in his ears, paused thoughtfully. To love is not to ignore past wrongs or avert our gaze from pain. Rather, it is to integrate those experiences into our understanding of God's grace. Each interaction, each challenge is an invitation to grow, to learn forgiveness and become vessels of love. As he spoke, a distant rumble of thunder rippled through the sky, laying heavy on the hearts of the listeners. An elder man, wise with years but burdened with grief, turned his gaze toward the heavens. But Moses, how do we reconcile the injustices, the betrayals that often catalyze our refusal to love? When someone's wounds reach deeply into our own, how can we rise above the cycle of pain? Moses raised his hands, as if trying to guide the storm away. The path is arduous, marked by steep inclines and shadowy valleys. Yet, within these depths lies the crucible for transformation. Each commandment, including "You shall not bear false witness," holds profound lessons about truth both in the world and in our hearts. When we choose authenticity in our communication, we strip away falsehoods that foster discord. The assembly absorbed his words, sensing the undercurrents of something larger, a revelation just out of reach. But what if unmasking the truth lays bare deeper conflicts? Can openness truly heal when it also exposes raw vulnerabilities? A voice asked, trembling with apprehension. In admitting our truths, we risk being hurt, yet we also stand poised to liberate others, encouraging them to shed their own veils. Moses urged. It is there, in the depths of honesty, that healing begins, when we dare to believe that love lasts, despite its trials. A palpable tension filled the air, and the assembly wrestled with their own wounds, the scars that shaped their narratives. Darkness lingered at the edges of their hearts. Would they have the courage to confront their stories as part of this divine practice? The sun continued to rise, illuminating the faces of those gathered, casting light upon the corners of their souls that longed for grace. As they contemplated the implications of their vulnerability, the warmth of their collective yearning kindled between them. A sense of wonder filled the air, a yearning for understanding intertwined with uncertainty. Could this community transcend the ego's grip, embracing love as a practice of ongoing revelation. And as they stepped forward into this reluctant dawn, they pondered a haunting question: in the pursuit of unveiling the divine mystery within the commandments, would they find release or encounter more shadows to navigate? As the last remnants of darkness retreated with the advancing light, a hush settled over the assembly. Each member, lost in contemplation, sensed the presence of an invisible thread binding them together, a tapestry woven from shared struggles, hopes, and sacred queries. Moses, standing amid an awakening circle of souls, noted the intensity of their reflections. The journey we embark upon today is not merely for knowledge's sake, but for the transformation of our very beings. The commandments, dear friends, are an invitation to a radical honesty. They are the sacred keys to unlock the chambers of our hearts where love and vulnerability dwell. With gravity underpinning his voice, Moses turned his focus to the second commandment. You shall not make for yourself a carved image. Such an edict speaks beyond idols of stone or wood. It challenges us to examine the images we project and the personas we adopt. What falsehoods do we cling to, and how do these hinder our true selves from emerging? The young woman, filled with resolve, rose again. But Moses, if we examine our facades, will we be prepared for the revelation? Could we confront the brokenness we see reflected back at us, embrace the discomfort? Moses encouraged gently. In acknowledging our false identities, we acknowledge our humanity. Yet remember, the commandment is not a call to condemnation but a call to liberation. When we shed the weight of our constructed images, we create space for deep connection with God, with ourselves, and with each other. Among the assembly, the elder woman's eyes brightened with understanding. So, the commandments are not simply prescriptive but are also reflections of our internal landscape. They compel us to wrestle with our truths. Precisely, Moses replied, his voice resonating with heartfelt sincerity. Yet, with truth comes responsibility. The weight of honesty, when embraced, demands action. It calls us to a higher standard of living, challenging us to embody love through our choices and actions. An anxious whisper echoed from the edge of the crowd. But what if that truth diverges from those around us? How do we stand firm in our convictions while fostering connection? Moses nodded solemnly. The answer lies within the commandment, you shall not steal. It teaches us about respect, not just for one another's property but for the very essence of their being. When we claim another's voice or suppress their truth, we rob them of their dignity. True love flourishes in spaces of mutual respect where differences do not divide but enrich the discourse. Conversations swirled, and one young man voiced apprehension. Yet, what happens when those differences ignite conflict? When the act of loving becomes tangled in the shadows of our misunderstandings? Moses raised a hand, inviting silence as he pondered the question. Conflict, dear friends, is a teacher disguised in embers. It ignites the opportunity for growth and reconciliation. In navigating the fire of discord, we harness one of the most crucial lessons. The commandment, you shall not murder, extends beyond the physical. It invites us to examine our words and actions that may wound spiritually. The air grew solemn. Each member weighed the weight of that admonition, the rippling effect of words and the responsibility of stewardship over one's voice. We must strive for kindness, the elder man spoke gently. In moments of provocation, how do we become conduits of peace? How do we embrace the essence of love when faced with anger and resentment? Moses smiled softly, comfort spreading among the assembly. In every interaction, we possess the power to sow seeds of healing or discord. It is a conscious choice, with each commandment guiding our discernment. Remember, though the path may steepen, when we choose love, we are never alone. God's presence infuses our efforts. The assembly exchanged knowing glances, drawn together by the shared understanding of their struggles and strengths. Yet, beneath that understanding lay a depth of questions still unacknowledged. What boundaries and prejudices would they need to dismantle? How does one balance the need for authenticity with the need for unity and community? As the sun continued its ascent, rays of light danced through the trees, illuminating not just the ground beneath them, but also the potential of their collective journey. In grasping the moral compass of the commandments, where would they find themselves in the face of personal storms? Would the relentless pursuit of love provide them a sanctuary or unveil deeper complexities waiting to unfold? Moses stood before the Israelites, the fresh light of dawn casting a golden hue upon the assembly, illuminating their faces filled with wonder and uncertainty. He felt the weight of the moment. This was not merely an exchange of laws but a sacred invitation to transform the essence of their collective being. People of Israel, he began, his voice steady yet infused with gentle urgency, we have gathered under the luminous embrace of this new day not just to echo the words engraved on stone, but to engage in the profound liberation that follows when we allow love to guide us. The crowd stirred, murmurs of agreement fluttering through the air, their hearts synchronized with the rhythm of hope and anticipation. The memories of the previous night, steeped in contemplation, lingered like a fragrant incense, inviting them to explore their truths deeply. What, then, does it mean to embrace love in the midst of our commandments? Moses continued, glancing at those assembled, each one a living testament to the struggles woven into the fabric of their existence. It means we must dare to acknowledge our flaws, our failures, and yet rise from them. Love is a journey, not a destination. A woman stepped forward, her voice shaking with sincerity. But Moses, we have seen the pain our hearts can inflict on one another. What if our willingness to love leads us only to further hurt? Moses nodded slowly, understanding the fear vibrating on the edges of her words. Yet, if we approach each interaction with the teachings of the commandments as our compass, we can create a sacred space where love becomes our greatest strength. Love does not deny our wounds, it invites us to heal together. As dawn painted the camp in hues of orange and pink, Moses felt a stirring among the crowd. The sun's ascent mirrored the rising understanding in their hearts. In the commandments lies not merely a call to adhere to rules, but an invitation into deeper relationship both with the Almighty and with each other. He pointed to the first commandment. You shall have no other gods before me. His is not simply about worship. It is a reminder that our priorities shape our reality. Are we placing love for the divine above all else? For when we do, we unlock a love that empowers us to see one another as reflections of the Creator. A ripple of contemplation spread among them, their eyes shining with the realization that this journey involved more than obedience, it demanded a radical shift in perspective. In every commandment, we find echoes of community, the foundation upon which we stand amidst our struggles. Each time we return to love, we propel ourselves into a collective journey of healing. One among the crowd, a young man, posed a question that hung in the air thick with uncertainty. But Moses, what if we falter? What if our hearts seek refuge in anger or despair rather than in love? Moses felt the gravity of that concern weighing heavily as he sought the right words. Struggles are not barriers but pathways to understanding our shared humanity. The commandment to love your neighbor as yourself is not just an ideal, but a living practice. When we falter, we must be brave enough to face it or extend grace even when it appears we do not deserve it. His gaze swept across the assembly, feeling their collective heartbeats sync with that of the earth itself. When faced with conflict or misunderstanding, let us remember that love invites us into vulnerability. It encourages us to listen deeply, to empathize wholly, and to respond with compassion, building bridges not walls. An ancient woman, her hands calloused from labor, raised a hand, her voice firm yet gentle. Moses, we have a history of division. How do we overcome this? How do we not allow our past failures to cage our future aspirations? Taking a deep breath, Moses responded with tenderness. We begin with the commandment, you shall not bear false witness. Honesty is foundational to love and community. When we suppress the truth to avoid discomfort, we inhibit the divine. Transformation begins in authenticity, the willingness to engage our true selves and share our narratives. The crowd leaned in, faces illuminated by the possibility of unity in honesty. Let us confront our histories, open our hearts, and share our stories. In doing so, we not only reclaim ourselves but empower one another to live out the divine love that binds us together. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm glow upon them, the assembly felt an ember of courage ignite within. Let us commit to building a culture of understanding, Moses urged, where judgment gives way to compassion. Let us yield not to the anger of our circumstances but to the love that transcends mere survival. Let the commandments etch a new narrative in our hearts, a reminder that, though we may fall, we rise together in grace. A deep silence settled over Thema, space where reflection fused with clarity, where hope ignited the weary souls. Molten resolve pulsed through the assembly, unearthing a collective willingness to transform. You see, my beloved, Moses articulated with fervor, embodying the commandments is not merely a list of don'ts, it is a tapestry woven from experiences of grace and unity. As we strive toward love, we must consciously cultivate a spirit unmarred by division and fueled by mutual respect, and at that moment, in the gathering of hearts and souls beneath the gentle embrace of dawn, they made a sacred pledge not only to uphold the commandments but to live in harmony through the lens of love and vulnerability. In that simplicity, a powerful revelation unfurled. The journey they were embarking upon was not merely linked to adherence, but a collective blossoming, a spiritual transformation where every rule became a guidepost toward discovering the richness of community and the depths of grace. With hearts ablaze and hope in their eyes, the assembly began to understand that the essence of truly living the commandments was not in the fear of transgression but in the joy of striving together. As they looked to one another, the shadows of their past began to fade, replaced by the brilliance of a new dawn, a dawning understanding that each commandment was woven into their humanity and that their future could be illuminated not just by rules, but by the radiant love that flowed freely within their midst. In this moment, the journey of faith stretched before them, and they stepped forward, hand in hand, into a promise of love that echoed throughout the ages, forever transforming their way of being in the world.